Now, there's a lot of amazing progressives that are running in the Democratic Party so that they can actually represent the voters instead of the large multinational corporations. These are progressives that have been, in a lot of ways, inspired by Bernie Sanders and said, you know what, I'm going to run a campaign where I don't take money from super PACs or from corporations. I'm going to run in my state. I'm going to take on these Republicans and, in a lot of cases, incumbent corporate Democrats. So I'm going to take over or I'm going to take on these incumbents so that I can actually represent the people in my district. Now, Bernie Sanders has shown that you can run a great campaign without taking money from these super PACs or these large donors. But you can't really run a good campaign if you don't know what voters you have to target with your campaign, where you should spend your energy, where you should spend your focus, and what voters might be most receptive to your campaign. Now, that information is inside of a database known as VoteBuilder. Now, VoteBuilder happens to be managed by the DNC. Do you see where I'm going with this? Now, look, if you've never heard of this VoteBuilder, then look, I'm not surprised. Not a lot of people know how political campaigns actually operate and how vital this list actually is to people who are running for office or who aspire to run for office. Okay, now this voter database is actually a way for, or is now being used, ironically, as a way for local and state parties affiliated with the DNC. It's being used as a way to crush these progressive campaigns. Now, Wired explains why this vote builder is so important and how they can actually use it as a weapon. Now, they said that vote builders become a central nervous system for every Democratic campaign, housing years of information on just about every contact the party has ever made with every voter. Developed through the partnership between the DNC and a company called NGP Van, the tool gives campaigns the inside track on potential donors, volunteers, or voters out of a pool of thousands, or in the case of a presidential election, millions of people. So it's absolutely vital that if you're a candidate that you have access to this list, right? However, as you're going to see, the DNC is making access to this list for people who are not part of the establishment, for people who are actually actively challenging establishment Democrats. They're making it very, very difficult for these people to be able to access this list. Now, there's a few people, for example, Justice Democrat Anthony Clark, that have ran into problems. Now, here's how they do it, right? Now, thanks to an intricate system of state-by-state rules governing who gets access to the data, some primary challengers, like Clark, are now being denied access to this critical pool of information by their own party. Again, this is supposed to be the Democratic Party, supposed to be an open tent. Oh, hey, look, may the best person win with the best ideas. Well, now it's turned into, oh, you're going to run against an incumbent? You're going to run against our guy, part of the establishment? No, then you're not going to have access to this voter data. Good luck, sir. That's what's going on here. Now, this, of course, is by design. By denying access to this list, you're going to protect incumbents. You're going to protect people who are major players in the party. So, and they're major players in the party infrastructure, and I think a lot of them might be prolific fundraisers for the party, and I think that gives it an extra perverse incentive to cut off people who are actually challenging these incumbent Democrats. Now, Clark, who is running against Representative Danny Davis, who's held the seat for about 20 years, says, quote, "The machine protects incumbents. What's one more way you can stack the deck against me? Deny me access to valuable information and data." In Illinois, some of those state rules prevents any candidate running against an incumbent from gaining access to the vote builder file. So that's one of the rules in Illinois that they put to stop progressive challengers. Oh, you want to run against an incumbent Democrat? Okay, well, find your own file. Sad day for you. Now, rather than allow access to VoteBuilder, the state party instead directed Clark to a tool called SmartVan. Now, this is another NGP van product that lacks proprietary DNC voter data. Again, this is somebody who's running as a Democrat. This is not somebody who's running as a third-party independent challenger, who obviously shouldn't have access to DNC data because they're not running as a Democrat. But this guy is running as a Democrat, and they're basically choosing the establishment Democrat, the incumbent, over everyone else. They're stacking, they're rigging the primary in favor of the establishment candidate. That's what's going on here. So, just like they stacked the primary against Bernie Sanders, rigged the primary against Bernie Sanders. Again, we're not talking about changing vote totals, but we are talking about voter disenfranchisement and voter suppression. So, and also not treating each candidate equally when it comes to their races, not being a neutral party, which again is what this falls under. They are not being a neutral party to these campaigns within the party. So, again, they won't give him access to VoteBuilder, Anthony Clark, but instead will allow him to use a less effective means of campaigning. So again, it's very clear evidence that the Democrats are trying to crush progressives. It gets worse. That's just in Illinois. Remember, state-by-state rules, right? In Washington, there are rules that are even more ridiculous. Sarah Smith, a Justice Democrat running a campaign against incumbent Democrat Adam Smith, was told that access to VoteBuilder required the endorsement of 50% of legislative district clubs plus one, as well as the backing of the state party chair. So basically, you have to win the primary before you can even run the primary. State legislators often wait until close to the actual primary to make an endorsement, Smith says, meaning her campaign would have to spend the majority of the race waiting around for endorsements before gaining access to the data. And even then, the likelihood of sitting party officials endorsing a challenger over an incumbent is low. Again, she's got to win before she even starts trying to win. Never have we seen this sort of systemic corruption, and this, of course, is inside the Democratic Party. That's why it has to change. Now, even more infuriating for Sarah Smith is this, quote, when she asked to see where the bylaw was written down, she was refused. Oh, sorry, we can't let you access our voter data because you haven't been endorsed by over 50% of all district clubs and the party chair. Okay, well, hey, look, can you at least show me where that's written down in your bylaws? Sorry, you can't because you haven't been endorsed by 50% of the... You see where I'm going this, right? You see where I'm going here. It is incredibly corrupt and not fair at all. So, okay. So she was denied the voter data. And look, so was Smith, right? Or so was Clark. But Clark went and got the other voter data, right? It's less comprehensive, but at least it's something, right? Smith tried to go that route as well. However, she also got denied, thanks to the bylaws. Sarah Smith's campaign spokesperson asked the party for a letter stating that they were being denied access to VoteBuilder. At least then, of course, the thinking went that she could at least access SmartVan, so she could do something, so she could get the ball rolling. In response, the Smith campaign says they received a, quote, Kafka-esque email claiming that even though campaigns can access VoteBuilder without the endorsements, quote, in our eyes, a campaign that doesn't have endorsements hasn't been denied. Again, so they're saying, hey man, look, we denied you, but we didn't actually deny you. So you're just going to have to wait to the end of the campaign when they actually do their endorsements before you can actually campaign, meaning you have to win the campaign before, or you have to win the race before you can even start trying to run the race with our voter data. Wow. It's amazing the dirty tricks that these incumbents will use to keep their power, right? But there's more. Now, Smith's campaign is now using a tool called political data. Now, that is not cheap. It costs about $10,000, substantially more than both VoteBuilder or smart van. Now you can imagine for somebody who's an incumbent who can raise millions of dollars or gets money from the DNC, $10,000 is not a problem. But remember, these are small grassroots campaigns that aren't taking any corporate or PAC money. So to raise $10,000 out in Washington, that's actually hard to do. But that's what she had to do in order to get this data to even try to have a shot at running. And again, it's not as complete as the DNC's VoteBuilder data. Now, Smith says the fact that alternatives exist does not make up for the party withholding information from newcomers into the party. So this is I wanted to say it's an old boys club, and it kind of actually is, but it's basically a secret club that we're going to make sure we're going to keep everybody else out. If you want to challenge us, we don't abide challenges. We're going to find some way to screw you over so that you can't actually be competitive at all. Now, that's not the worst, right? Or maybe it is. But there's another example of these rules and bylaws also hurting a Justice Democrat. In New York, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, another Justice Democrat, actually had no problem accessing VoteBuilder. Oh, wow. But wait, there's a little bit of a catch. Rather than the wealth of information where voters stand on issues and who they've supported in the past, her campaign found only a stripped-down voter file. She says, quote, it was all gone. They had paid a total of $6,000 for basically nothing more than names, phone numbers, and addresses. No comprehensive voter data, which is what this is supposed to be. Now, that's despite a provision in the campaign's contract with the New York Democrats, which guaranteed Ocasio-Cortez access to, quote, all proprietary ID data collected or developed by other licensees in prior election cycles. Now, when they asked about this provision, the VoteBuilder coordinator at the New York Democratic Party said that it only applies to data Ocasio-Cortez may have collected herself in previous election cycle if, for instance, she had run for a different office in the past. So you see how that provision, again, helps incumbent Democrats. Well, who she's running against, Joe Crowley, who is a darling, who's a darling of Wall Street, he's ran there for 20 years. He's a long-term incumbent, and so he has been able to gather and amass this huge amount of data, which is incredibly helpful for a campaign. Now, they're saying that that is strictly his data, and so you're unable to share it, right? Now, Ocasio-Cortez doesn't want his data, but she also thinks that it's not incredibly fair, right? Because what she's doing is she's being charged the same amount as any other candidate to access this voter data, but she's actually getting much less for it than her opponent, Crowley. So that, again, shows how this system favors incumbent Democrats. Now, this is how the Democratic Party, unfortunately, seems to deal with primaries. They don't like primaries. They despise primaries because they want to stay into power. And so, look, Republicans also want to stay in power, but they actually welcome primaries. But Democrats, they come up with rules and bylaws and dirty tricks in order to try to prevent any challenger from having a chance in any sort of primary election. This is how the Democrats right now operate. This is what we need to change if we're actually going to have a party that is more open and more inclusive of everyone's voice and actually represents the people. This right here is the systemic corruption that we need to change.